Wow. So, yeah, we had a great show last week. We are kicking off the new year
I'm
pretty
gonna beat
heavy
you
this
some.
year. I think it's time. This is one thing we have never touched on, so it's probably a good thing. Um, for everybody watching, welcome to the Pro Educators, the Groomers Cut, and this is 2022, our first show of the year. This whole month is going to be about retirement. Think it's very important. A lot of us have not had this on our radar. A lot of people don't think it's important because your age might be thinking you're young and starting out and that there's all the time in the world for this. So, we're going to talk a little bit about some information, get some heavy facts out for you to think about. Um, Next week, I do have a guest who is going to be on and talking about the different kinds of retirement funds you can set up. It is not just as simple as opening a savings account and putting money away. So, we're going to have somebody on to talk about that, answer some questions, and he knows his stuff. So, and there's going to be a big progression through this week, through this month. So, first off, if this is your first time watching, please let StreamYard have permission, and you should give permission. Let them know, that way we can see your comments over. We are on 9 platforms this evening, and you might not see a comment or a question that is on somebody else's where they're at. So we will try to keep up with all of those. And please throw out questions, throw out what you know, or if you are, and we will take it from there. So I just want to start out really quick because I know Jennifer has a story that she wants to kick off with, but I just want to say that this is definitely something that I think tonight we are definitely going to talk about your more or less looking at why we should be doing this. What's the point? Because there is some big facts. And Jennifer, I'm going to let you go ahead and tell your story
Mm.
really quick. I'm going to pull up my notes because I took a lot of notes. I told you
Oh,
guys
good.
the last week I've been doing a lot of research on this for you.
This
So
is so
Good.
important.
I'm going to grab my notes.
I don't know.
So good.
I don't know about you, Dara and Chrissy and Katie, but and our hello to Kim in our chat room and Lori. I don't know, Dara, if you saw this, but Lori's trying to get on and
She
she
can't
can't for
join.
some
Yes,
reason.
Lori,
Uh,
she's probably not.
Technical glitch there.
I'll
But
get
in
her on.
any case, happy New Year to everybody. And boy, howdy does it creep up on you faster than what you think. I mean, I feel like, I'm 64. And so, it's upon me and we're starting to talk about it in really serious ways. But honestly, like it just went so fast. Like you think you always have time to plan for your retirement. And of course, it absolutely should go without saying, but needs to be said over and over again. You have to start early. You have to start early. You have to start early. So I started when I got very excited when I saw that this was Dara's topic tonight. And I wanted to share a story that I had written a column about in Groomer to Groomer magazine some years ago. So if you're a regular reader of Groomer to Groomer, you may have heard this story that I had written about. But this is a true story of a groomer that I met, I don't know, 20 years ago, maybe 15 years ago. And I was not grooming full time. I was still teaching high school, and but would occasionally pick up a few extra bucks of some grooming on the weekends. And a friend of mine who was a regular client at a nearby grooming salon in my Chicago suburban area said, "Oh, my groomer is out for a weekend and they're desperate for help there. Could you go there and work there for the Saturday, Sunday?" And I said, sure, I pick up some extra money. And so I went and worked just for 2 days at this place called Canaan Coiffures in Highwood, Illinois. And in that shop, I groomed at a table next to a young lady named Cindy. She and I were actually about the same age. And she was an incredible groomer, really good, did beautiful work. And I, just was asking her about, where'd she learn to groom, and what was her life like, and just being, friendly with her. And I said, "Oh my gosh, you and I are about the same age. You must be," because I was already, I think, in my 50s at that point. I said, "You must be like me, already starting to think about retirement," because at that point I was planning my retirement from teaching. And she said, "Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm retirement. Yeah, I'm gonna, I'm gonna, I have to get to that pretty soon." And I said, "Oh, you haven't started anything for your retirement? You haven't started saving, your special savings accounts?" Or, she goes, "Well, I mean, I guess I'll get that Social Security thing, right? Right." And I said, "Oh, you've been paying into Social Security." But I was already worried because the shop that I was their guest grooming at for the weekend pays cash under the table, cash under the table, cash under the table. And I said, "Oh, so you've been paying into your own Social Security all of this time?" Because I knew that this shop was not doing the employee benefit thing and legally putting her paycheck through governmental tax regulations and so on. And but she really believed that, Social Security was like automatic. She thought that she had it coming to her as a resident of the United States. And I said, "Oh, well, no, actually, Cindy, you don't get Social Security unless you pay into it." She had been working for 29 years at that one grooming shop. 29 years. I said, "Wow, that's amazing. 29
Wow.
years at one grooming shop. That's
Wow.
incredible." She was in her mid 50s and had not saved a dime. In fact, I think she was like 56, 57 at that point, had not saved a dime for
Wow.
retirement, had been paid cash all of those years, had some bad knees that needed to be surgically addressed, with no health care. And she really believed, because she never looked into it, that she was going to get Social Security and have enough of that to live off. And we all know that Social Security is, even with Social Security that you've been paying into all your life, it's not going to be all that you need in order to retire.
Right.
And I just said, "Oh, did you know that you don't get Social Security unless you pay into it?" And I just, you know, I it just was killing me to have this conversation with her. I felt
Yeah.
so bad for her. And um and she just kind of, like, her jaw just sort of dropped, and you could sort of see her whole life falling apart right there in front of her.
Mm.
And I I will never forget that heartbreaking conversation with this really good groomer who had been working hard, but, paying cash, paid cash, and she just took her cash and paid her rent and bought her groceries and
Mhm.
thought she was going to be fine. And the best I could do was, urge her to see a financial advisor as soon as possible.
Mhm.
But this really
Yeah.
is, unfortunately, the story of way too many groomers, right? There are still
Yes.
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
many
Yeah.
groomers that
Yeah.
are living, under the radar, and haven't even begun to plan for it because they're kind of, just living to the max of their budget.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, hopefully we can make some awareness of this and bring in because it is again this comes down to, and I know we're not talking about it, but it does come down to the professionalism in the industry,
Mhm.
and that the
Absolutely.
lack of this professionalism
Hi,
also
Lori.
Hi.
stems, hi
Hello.
Lori, also brings in that we are that people aren't thinking about this. And I think a lot that happens, that this kind of falls under the this radar for a lot of people, is that one, they're like, well, maybe a lot of people look at this as a hobby industry. And we know there are a lot of hobby
Mhm.
groomers that have a husband's or another or spouse's income that's
Mhm.
also helping and supporting the family, and that brings the benefits and that retirement to the table. But your point, Jennifer, is right on too, that even that, if as a business owner, we're not paying into Social Security. We're matching taxes for all of our employees that are
Right,
paying into Social
right,
Security, but as a business owner, if you're not on your own payroll, you're
Right.
not paying into Social Security. So, for
it depends
unless
on how you structure
your
your
accountant
yeah, if you're actually
is yeah,
we actually have an LLC and we do pay me a salary. So it's yeah, it's but you're right. That's you got to be really careful to do that. I want to acknowledge Facebook user in the chat room who said, "Oh,
yes,
it's
it's
Kat.
Kat.
Oh,
I
hi,
know.
Kat. I didn't see that. Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, Kat started young and is going to be able to retire at 50 because she planned ahead. That's
Mhm.
awesome.
Yeah. I was gonna jump into that here in a minute,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
um so a lot of with this, there are so many different ways that people can be setting up, so many different things you can do, but one thing that you really need to consider is that, retirement, it's a timeline. Just like with any goal setting for that we've been talking about for the last year, this
Goals.
is one more aspect of that is setting up for yourself in the future as a business owner, as a groomer, as whether you're working for somebody or that business owner. A
Mhm.
lot of us in this industry, we do not have the means not only to not give benefits to employees, but also to offer some type of 401k package. Um, if you're involved in a corporate, you guys are golden in a corporate because they do offer all of that. They have those plans and everything that you can start that. But
I think, and if
small
I could
business,
say, I wanted to say something about that. That is such an important point, Dara. The fact, for those of us that have been grooming for 4 decades, like I have off and on, it is staggering to me. One of the major changes for the good that the big box store grooming chains that have come into our profession that really weren't there when I got started as a groomer. Most grooming when back in the 1980s and 70s, people just groomed out of their house kind of as a side gig, and that was pretty much what the grooming profession was. And once the big box stores started offering that as a service and got more serious about it, the big box stores were the ones that really first introduced real healthcare, real retirement, legal wages, all of that, real above board, real employee stuff that kind of helped to lift our profession up out of the
mhm,
dark ages a little bit.
it's a good thing they did.
Yeah, thank
Yeah.
God. Yeah.
Yeah.
And maybe in a few more years, they might be regretting it because as quick as this is changing,
Yeah.
they might regret doing that. But, for those of us who are making a career out of this, you've got to put everything into place. Um, so first things people should be really considering with their goal settings, is your timeline. Um, and I know I say this a lot. You're got to estimate what and know what your expenses are now, but of course that's going to change year after year, and hopefully you're growing so that um sorry so that you're growing and making more money so that you can change that. But if you are tracking that, if you are maintaining, is that
Somebody's got some background noise.
I know. I was just about to say there's a lot of background noise.
Not my house.
It sounds like Lori's.
In my house?
It might be.
There you go. That's it, Lori. I figured with you
um,
being in headphones that couldn't have been
I
you.
know they might not be plugged in enough. That might be
Just
what's
talk to
going
us through
on.
expressive dance.
Ah,
I'll unmute myself when I need to talk.
yeah.
So estimating your expenses right now and tweaking those. The thing that people forget about when it comes to this tax and I'm sorry, to this um retirement is all that money that you're putting aside. When you start bringing it out, you're going to have taxes. And so
Well, that's
that's
why God invented 401ks.
the
Actually,
401k. But there are
yeah.
other ways that
Mhm.
you can, instead of having to do that, and a good financial planner and a good accountant are
Mhm.
huge for what we do. I think whether you're self-employed or
Mhm.
you are working for somebody, having a good accountant, your accountant should be helping you set that up right away. So, yeah, Lisa, we're gonna next week we've got somebody coming in that's gonna talk about the differences a lot more in depth than I can,
Mhm.
but I'm just kind of throwing them out there right now. Uh,
It is really
so
critical that people also, again, with the Social Security question, everybody should just acknowledge that Social Security will not be enough for you to live off of unless you have paid over and above into it. What more? And it's even that
yeah,
there are much better ways to invest, but everybody should, as a baseline, make sure that their Social Security is solid, and that if you are working as a groomer in one of those questionably legal and probably illegal arrangements where you are not being paid as an employee with Social Security, if you don't have that record established where you've been paying into Social Security all your life, they're going to be you're going to be really without documentation, without planning. That is the absolute minimum that you should do, is make sure your Social Security is paid into all of your life. Then that because that carries other benefits as well, and that's why everybody should be working as a legal employee, because you don't want to be the employer that's cheating your employees out of retirement benefits, Social Security, unemployment, workman's comp, all of those really critical employment things. And you don't want to be the employee who has been cheated out of your retirement. Nobody wants to be
but
that person, and yet our
but if
industry is
you're
filled with them.
properly set up as a self-employed person, you're going to be paying into that.
Yeah. Yep.
If you're
If
properly
you do
set
it
up.
right, yeah. But
And if your well, not your employer, but wherever you're working, there are, you have to do it right. And it's
tricky.
it
Involves
is.
lawyers. Yeah.
Well, I don't, not really. I mean, it
But
involves
not
good
all the time
accountants.
to set something up,
Mhm.
and
Set it up. Yeah.
and why
Yeah.
wouldn't you invest in having a specialist help you set it up?
Absolutely.
So my parents retired about 10 years ago. And one of the things that they talked to their friends about who had retired before them, a lot of people saying that the first 10 years were pretty easy and then it gets hard because a lot of people hadn't planned out how long this is going to extend to, and then the health problems start to creep in and copays on medications and things that I think a lot of us don't necessarily think of. I mean, I know my grandmother and my great grandmother lived into their 90s without
Yep.
taking care of themselves. And I
Mhm.
mean, I'm thinking I'm going to live it to my 90s. I better be prepared.
Yeah,
Well,
no,
that's
it's really
true.
true.
Right,
Same thing happened to
right
my
now,
mother who just passed. Yeah.
the statistics from the IRS is saying that most people typically retire at 65, and they are retired for at least 20 years.
Yeah.
So you have to
Yeah.
at least consider planning for 20 years. And
Yeah.
if you don't have those medical benefits, which, I'm going to say my husband and I have been going through a lot of changes in our lives and the structure of our world, and we had some heavy decisions to make, and it came back that we got to stay where we're at because his pension is invaluable to us.
Mhm.
We
Yeah.
can't give that up, and I can't say enough about having that and thinking 15 years ago, I didn't have to worry about this kind of thing.
Yeah.
But thinking about it now in my 40s and going, wow, I had not considered anything like this in my 20s and 30s. And now I'm in my 40s going, I'm not too late, but, so for the last 10 years, this has been a huge conversation, actually 11 years. So for
Mm.
that, but planning for this, they did say, again, I went back, you can go onto the irs.gov retirement. I will post the link for you guys. But they're saying that you should be putting aside, if you are not paying into any type of 401k, at least 15% of your income every year, starting at age 20.
Yeah. And Lori, you're
That's
the youngest.
huge.
You're the youngest among us, Lori.
Yeah.
How old are you, and what have you done, if anything?
So I've actually, since I've been working, unfortunately, I fall during, the victims of not being knowledgeable about what's legal and what's not. But however, I've always saved $100 every week into a savings account. And I might not be knowledgeable as much as what to do, and what accounts will benefit me. And so I'm really taking notes and in consideration, like Dara said, getting a financial advisor that's going to help me. We just bought a house, and a lot of my savings went towards that house, and I'm falling under the category of, okay, well, I just bought a house and I dumped a lot of my savings in there. Now what? How do I build myself from here? Because I kind of took a couple steps backwards, even though I just bought a house, and
Well,
even
but
though,
is retirement a separate plan for you than just savings? Because really, you should have both a savings account for things like
right,
maybe
right. So I
trips
do
and
have
things, and then you
something.
should
So
also have a retirement plan that is untouchable.
right. So that every week that I take out, that doesn't get touched. It's actually a zero in my head. I don't look at it. It's nothing that I can go online and see what's in there. That just goes into a separate account, automatically gets transferred out because I don't know if I'm going to use it for retirement or if I get hurt or anything. And my main thing is retirement. And I can't stress that enough. My husband and I are speaking about it because he's self-employed as well. And
Oh,
for us, we have to think about when we can't do it anymore. It's
Right.
just one of those
Yeah.
things. And I wish I started in my 20s really being educated on this. Because even though, yes, I put X amount of money away, that's not going to be enough. And then now speaking about, yeah, well, I didn't even consider medications like you were saying, Chrissy, or, what if when I get older, I need something that's even more expensive, to
or
fall.
what if you fall and break a bone and you have to have in-home care to help you, and
Absolutely.
you're a widow or a widower, and I mean, there are so many things that can happen at the end, and
I didn't even, and that's something that I didn't even think of until right now. Like, well, holy cow, it's not just, I was just thinking, oh
Not
yeah, I
just
have
paying the
somebody.
bills and keeping the
Right,
lights on.
Yep.
right,
Right.
right.
All right. So I'll do a quick brief here too, because just what you're talking about, Lori, is for next month. And here's a teaser for next month. We're going to talk about that too, how to prepare for those emergency situations. Because that follows all of this. I mean, all of this is stuff that's not talked about in general in our industry.
true.
Well, I find that a lot of groomers just are like a lot of groomers tend to be artists and not necessarily business savvy. And a friend of mine is a hairdresser, and she says the same thing. Like, if you own a business, you might have some business savvy, or you might not. You might just be winging it. And because of that, a lot of us
Winging it.
winging it.
You
But
got
because
the
of that, a
best
lot of us have
consultant you
some
could have,
problems.
Katie.
I mean, how many groomers beat themselves up about raising something $5? It's like, but do you have health insurance? Do you take vacations? Do you have retirement? And they're like, oh no, I can't afford that. I'm like, you need to be able to price yourself to be able to afford those things because they're important.
including
Right.
your reretirement.
Yeah,
including
and
your
it-
Including your
retirement.
retirement
And sometimes I list that off to
15%.
customers.
Starting
I've
at
had-
the age of 20, 15%, that's a really good number to
Yeah.
really think about. Starting at the age of 20. And if you're not starting until you're 40, you got to do way more than 15%.
You got to double that
Right.
up.
And if you're thinking you
and
have
they-
time, guess what? It sneaks up on you. I'm still 18.
Yeah,
I don't know how
exactly.
this happened.
Right.
On paper, I'm 50, and I don't know how that happened.
Yeah.
'Cause I'm 18.
You don't look a day over 18, Chrissy.
That's what I say.
But
We
it
talked
sneaks
about
up
that
on
today.
you.
It's so true. It's so true.
I graduated high school.
We are in an industry that doesn't talk about this because we have come up. We're a baby industry historically,
Mhm.
and I did a whole history on I did an article for Groomer to Groomer about the birth of the All American Grooming Show here in Chicago and I was at the very first grooming trade show ever in the history of the world. I was there. It was in Chicago, and that was a long time ago. And I was pretty young. And I have to tell you, this industry has changed so much. There was no professional structure at all until just in the last 40 years at all. And still, there's no licensing or regulation for the most part. There's only voluntary stuff. Finally, we've got good education, good conferences, good magazines, good books. It's finally starting to happen for us. We're starting to come up, but oh my gosh, we have so many people going right now that have been grooming for decades, facing retirement.
Bless you.
And don't have anything really substantially saved. And I think groomers' bodies get beat up more, don't you?
Oh, yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, yeah.
Anything. You think
I'm
about
going through that.
Absolutely.
My
not
hands
just
were shot.
groomers, but anybody in the service industry, when you or the trade, we are so much in the public. We are so much, and physically and mentally, it's brutal. So yeah, you've got to be prepared.
I
Thank
told
you.
Jared, did you see that
they
great
need to
question?
train as if it's a
Laura.
sport. Yeah, I told the students they need to train as if it's a sport.
Yeah.
And keep yourself, because it will beat you up if you're not like cross training, if you're not keeping yourself strong.
Right.
Stretching, yeah.
And
Stretching.
again, not just
definitely.
Stretching,
physically,
strengthening.
but mentally as well.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yes.
This is the one thing that I have noticed, and Chrissy, you and Lori, it'd be good to ask, and even Jennifer, a business owner, Katie as a business owner, it seems like right now everyone's so sensitive, and getting a full day's worth of work and not be accommodating to all the needs
Right.
is difficult in this industry.
And there is something called compassion fatigue.
There is.
That as groomers, not just the business owner part of it, but as groomers, we see a lot of neglect. And that is hard. After so many years, sometimes it catches up with you. So
Oh, I went through, not to get off subject, but I had a one of our graduates last week who contacted me about compassionate grooming as a mobile groomer and not being compensated for it and feeling that the animal was neglected. And how do you juggle wanting and needing to say, I've got to turn them in because this animal is so neglected. I don't care about the money that you didn't pay me, but you don't need this animal. And so coaching them through this particular part of their new career to go, what's the best way to handle that? So that might be a topic in itself later this year.
Yeah, maybe. Yep.
That's a great topic.
Well, compassion fatigue is one of the leading causes. Compassion fatigue is one of the leading causes for veterinarian suicide.
Absolutely.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
They have some of the highest suicide rates. Because imagine being a veterinarian who's like, I have all of this medical knowledge and all of these wonderful procedures we could do. And the owner's like, more than 100.
Yeah.
You know, like
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Yeah.
scary.
We have a great question in the chat room. I think it's Laura because it says Facebook user. Then she says, "By the way, I'm Laura." So I hope that's you. She said, "How do you price things to accommodate your expenses and retirement? Is there a percentage?" Now, Dara, would this be that 15% of your income starting at the age of 20 that the IRS is recommending? Is that
You
is
know,
that just
I
a
will be
minimum?
well, I'm going to be honest and say I had never considered this one part into my overhead.
Yeah, I didn't
So
either. So, yeah.
I'm looking at
And we should,
That's
Christy
good.
and
going,
we
I know.
should
okay,
be.
I'm like,
so
hey.
I know,
Yeah,
but
we should be. Yeah.
I mention it
just
to owners when they're like, "Why do
flags.
you charge so much?" I'm like, "I
Yep.
have to retire. I have to have a
Right.
cost of living. I am a professional, so I deserve a good living like the rest of you." But
Yeah.
yeah, I don't necessarily
Yeah.
have it as part of my overhead, and I really should.
All right. We need to, so for next
I
week,
see. I don't think it should be a percentage. I think it should be by an actual projection of what rent, food, clothing, medical
well,
care.
that's,
I mean,
I was just
you
going to go
actually need a
there.
budget. Yeah.
That's what I was going to say is I'm going to sit down with my 4 in-staters, not trying to exclude you, but we'll put it out there. But, the 4 of us, let's sit down and talk about this for even if it's 20 minutes or a half hour, on a Zoom
Right.
call this week and see, at least we can come up with something because we're all in the same state.
Right.
And compare it and get some numbers down so that we can answer Laura's question for next week about
Absolutely.
doing that and how we need to add that in. She said she's 50. Okay, Laura, I'm sorry. You're putting this in there. I'm thinking this is still you. And
Is this all the same person? Because it all just says
think
Facebook user.
so. And she just asked how often we're on. Every Monday night at 7.
Every Monday.
Yeah.
Compassion fatigue with staff. Katie did too.
Oh, I could go on.
I do think
Lisa,
that it's kind of a sign that that we have undervalued. There's a lot of ways that the grooming industry is just now starting to talk about the ways that we've been undervalued and underrecognized. And I do think that the pandemic puppy phenomenon that has so exploded the pet population numbers in the United States I've written 2 columns in Groomer to Groomer about this. This is really a huge transformative time in our industry right now. We are living in a definitively transformative time because of the increased profile to pet ownership. There's this wonderful new book by a veterinarian named Mark Cushing called Pet Nation that he just came out with last year that is all about this ways that there's like pet love. There's dogs in every single TV commercial. There's pets in every, like pets are now a major part of our society in ways that 25, 30, 40, 50 years ago, not at all. This is a whole new ball game, and we are professionals and we can start acting like that. And I think the message to all of the groomers out there that are still, afraid to raise their prices and stuff is, just open your eyes and look around you and see how it's changing.
And I'm going to say doggy daycare people need to do the same thing.
Absolutely.
Because nobody is charging enough.
Yeah.
Well, in the mid 80s, when I started working with dogs, my dad's like, "You'll never make a living working with dogs." And I'm like, "I make a nice living working
Chrissy,
with dogs."
Yeah.
Yeah.
My dad still says that.
Yeah.
Well, my parents now at this point are like, "I don't know. She grooms and does some other stuff." I'm like, "Okay, close enough." She's a dog groomer and she trains too. I'm like,
I definitely got the I had to leave my parents' home because I had a shop that I was running, and they're like, "Oh, you could just stay overnight. It's no big deal. They're just dogs in the morning." And I'm like, "That dog is my business, though.
Right.
It's my name out there."
No, it's an exciting time for us, but it is also really a wonderful thing, Dara, that you're talking about this tonight. I just know from talking to most, just anecdotally, and I talk to thousands of groomers every year. Most groomers, my guess is most groomers are not doing anything for retirement.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
It's hard though. It's hard because that income ratio is pretty low. And when you're already living paycheck to paycheck and trying to sustain off of a minimum wage, not a living wage, not to get into any debate about that, but
Mhm.
we still see a lot more minimum wage than we do living wage.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
if you
Especially in New Hampshire.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
Yes.
Massachusetts they just raised their minimum wage. This is it now up to 14.75 an hour?
Mhm.
How many groomers in Massachusetts are going to be losing their jobs?
There's a comment, then raise the price. She's absolutely
Raise the
right.
price.
Mhm.
Is that
You
if
gotta
that's
raise the price,
is that
right.
Laura
You've
again?
got to raise the price, yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
You have to.
but shops are but the supply and demand and and
Yeah.
everything else, shops are gonna start closing. Small business at that is gonna start closing.
Mhm.
They
I have
can't. They're
friends
gonna
with
start.
other I have friends
Go
with
ahead.
other types of small businesses, and they're saying kind of the same thing. I think it's
Yeah.
not necessarily a grooming industry thing as much as it's
Right.
the
No.
Small
the small
business.
business,
Small
5
business. That's what
employees or
yeah.
less,
Mhm.
Yep.
that
Yeah.
unless you get into more than 5 employees, so many people just don't have it set up right.
Right.
And Americans aren't used to paying Americans to work.
Right. Yeah.
That is
Yeah.
true, especially in a small business.
Yeah, yeah. Like, it cost how much for that pair of gloves that you knit? I can buy them at Walmart for $3. It's like,
Mhm.
yeah, I'm not
Yeah.
going to knit you gloves for $3, you know.
Yeah.
As
No,
an
you're
example, like
absolutely
some of my
right.
friends who do craft businesses,
Mhm.
Oh, Kat is also in
Oh,
here.
yep, cat.
So
Yeah.
sorry, Kat. We're not groom then groom less groom. Yeah.
Well, and I want to acknowledge Kim's comment about how
What
she's been
if?
dependent on the fact that her husband has been the advanced planner. But in any situation like that, I mean, I'm married to a wonderful financial planner too. But honestly, if we don't, both of us have a contingency plan for what if one of us gets hit by a truck tomorrow, because it could so happen. I've had my 25-year-old sister was murdered, she and her husband, and it just sometimes the world hits you, and
It's unpredictable. Yeah.
it's unpredictable, and you
Yeah.
can't let, not even a spouse, you can't let that be your only safety net.
Yeah.
It could be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lisa. Why is somebody asking? Lisa had mentioned most vet clinics are now corporate
Yeah.
owned. Yeah, corporate's got
It is here too. Yeah.
Right.
they're taking over, but corporate offers all the benefits that
Yeah.
Yep.
everything we're talking about here can't offer. So
There's a lot
yeah,
of people. There's a lot of people grooming for the big box stores that might make a wage that some of us can say, "Oh, I can make more than that," grooming on my own. But they're not getting health care, retirement,
Right. Right.
Yeah.
workman's comp, unemployment, all those things that you really, really need. You have to have
Mhm.
that.
and we can't stop scaring all the employees.
Right, right,
We still got to keep some employees,
right.
right?
There you go. There you go.
Well, I really, it would be really nice for the business owners to be just slightly, just enough that they can have it on the radar, and when they hire someone, let them know, hey, we don't put money into your social security, so consider doing your research. For that woman that you were mentioning, Jennifer,
Horrible stuff.
had she would have just said, hey, just to let you know, this is how we do it here, but you don't have this, so if just find your own way of, you find your own means in doing that. So at least she has the opportunity to be able to fix that versus grooming for 20 extra years and not know.
Yeah, but she was
Yes.
already like 57 years old when she found out that you don't get Social Security automatically just by
Right,
being
right,
alive,
That's the
that you have
thing,
to
is a
pay
lot of
into it.
people
I mean,
just
right.
assume.
that's scary though. That's like elementary school. Like, how could anybody
But they
even
don't
go
they
through
don't-
the American school system and not know that? That's
Well,
really bad.
that's not
In this-
something. Medicare is the exact same way.
Right,
If
Yeah,
you're
and
not
in,
paying
I
into
know in our
Medicare either,
area,
you're not getting Medicare.
in our area, they don't even teach them to balance a checkbook.
Ugh.
Like they have
Not
no
anymore.
clue. These kids.
Yeah.
No.
It's I'm proud to say that Illinois requires, because I used to teach this because I'm a retired social studies teacher, but Illinois requires a basic, they call it like a consumer economics class.
Mhm.
It's a state requirement. You cannot get a high school diploma in the state of Illinois without taking a consumer economics class, which is how to balance a checkbook,
Right.
Insurance, retirement planning, investments, managing your money. It's a great thing that has to be.
Yeah, that stuff is all optional, if they even offer it in the schools around
If
here.
they offer it.
No,
I think that's
really sad.
that's an unusual.
I can't speak to that because I went to an agricultural high school. So
Oh, so
there are a
yeah.
lot of things we didn't know. We had agribusiness class. I can tell you all about that. But that actually helped us as students because it was agribusiness. So it was like, okay, how to plan your business out.
Mhm.
My hero, Lisa Herbold, says she's amazed that people don't bother to research anything to help themselves. It really is. We get busy. We get really busy in our lives, and we're just living day to day, and we're not, advanced planning is not in our, I'm going to say, in our evolutionary biology. I've got a college professor husband that teaches this evolutionary biology stuff. It's pretty amazing. Our brains are we're very survival driven, and we are programmed to live in the now and to survive in the now. And advanced planning is something that is not easy to do. We have to fight our own nature. To think about something 20, 30, 40 years down the road. But honestly, savings doesn't work unless you start.
Savings doesn't work.
Yeah.
I did see in one of the charts that I was looking at and actually talking with our own financial guy, he had mentioned to me, he goes, if at 19 or 20 years old, you started and just put $5 aside a day, instead of going and he put it in terms of for going and teaching at a school, not getting that coffee,
not
going
the Starbucks,
that drive
yeah,
instead
the morning
put that
Starbucks, take that $5
and forget about it. Even if it's cash in your house, whatever, putting it into a savings account, it doesn't do you any good. The return on a savings account is not big enough.
Worth it.
You've got to save that though for if you put, and you know what? I can't even remember the exact number, but I want to say it was like, hold on.
Most savings accounts are only 1% to 2% interest, or 3% at most. Yeah.
Well, and I don't know about you guys, but I don't have the self-control for that, because if I had a savings account that had that much money in it, I'd be like, we can replace the driveway. It's not like I would spend it on stupid things, but I'd be like, hey, this is a good time to do some stuff on the house.
Yeah.
That's why it is difficult, and that is one thing. But before you can really start getting in with any type of financial planner or something, you've got to have a chunk of money. They're not going to come and be like, oh yeah, we'll start taking your $5 a day. They want 5 years of $5 a day. So you've got to have that kitty, so to speak, and have that to be able to go. If you put $5 aside for 1 year, you've got about $1,800. Multiply that by 5 and you're looking at a little over $9,000. So that's a good chunk of money in 10 years to bring, or 5 years to bring to a financial planner, because now they can take that and subdivide it
program. Yeah.
for you
Right.
and
Yep.
start your portfolio. But you got to have at least $10,000 to start that portfolio. If you can save that much quickly, then you have this $10,000 that you can bring to somebody who can say, I'm going to take 5 of it and put it into a safety net. And I'm going to take 5 of it and we're going to be aggressive with it because you're young enough that we can be aggressive with it. So they're going to play with your money and balance it that way. And that's what our guys do is you start watching when you get that going into your portfolio and you start watching and learning. Now we're like, oh, it's all about the stock market. What's going on with it? Where's our money at? Where's it's over here? It's over there. It's over here. And it's like you get addicted to watching it just as much as it's crazy. It's like, oh man, we're down $6,000, but whoa, what a great hit when you get 20,000 and you're up like that. So, but you got to have a base to start with.
And that's how we
And
saved for a deposit for our house. You know, like I know
that's
we can do that stuff. You know, like if you do like 3 or 4 years worth of, we're going to pound this out. You
pound
know?
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Credit card debt is the worst.
Oh yeah.
That
Yep.
is.
Don't
We've
get
avoided that pretty effectively, avoided that. We have enough
You
credit
are
to keep going in the
lucky.
system, you know?
Yeah, I would say we are too. I
You are
barely have
too.
any.
That's very smart.
We have enough credit
Yep.
to have a credit score. You know what I mean? Like you have to have some circulating credit to have a credit score, you know?
do.
But
Right.
Best advice I got coming out of college is to somebody is going to offer college graduates, they're going to get offered credit cards or something because it's a pretty big deal to grab somebody coming out of school and offering them a little bit of an inducement to go into debt. And rather than go into no debt when you're 21 and you've just finished college or something, go ahead and borrow $1,000. Don't touch it. Don't spend it. Immediately pay it back, and then you get good credit scores. You have to, just sacredly say, I'm going to borrow $1,000. I'm going to pay it back on, exactly on the payment plan, and I'm not going to touch it. And I'm going to lose a little bit in interest, but I'm absolutely going to gain in terms of finally establishing credit score. That's really
because you have to prove that you can pay it back to get the
Right.
credit score.
Yeah.
It's
Well, that's
important
what
to
I
have
did.
business debt too.
Yep.
Yeah, but there's so many people that are focused in their jobs and groomers are we're very focused on the dogs and on our art and on these live creatures. And, even the time that you need to set aside to really plan this out and to really crunch some numbers and sit down with somebody like a CPA or a tax advisor or somebody to tell you what it is and likely project even what you need.
Yeah.
Even interviewing your own parents, grandparents, older relatives, finding out about what their expenses were that surprised them when they retired. My husband and I, after I started taking care of my mother, who just passed this year, this last year, I really learned about the long-term care needs. And my husband and I signed up for and bought a long-term care policy so that if one of us has to go into a facility, like my mom got Alzheimer's and had to go at least for 2 years into a facility. And once, you have to plan for what if there's a long-term illness or something. You have to.
it is massively expensive.
Yeah, really.
Yeah.
Facilities are very expensive,
Yeah.
even with a policy.
Mm.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm going to say it. I don't know which Facebook user, but credit builder loans are great and you get the money at the end of the loan. I am not familiar with
Don't know about
those.
those.
And
It's pretty much.
Kim said, I'm just going to go back one more because Kim had said that her kids went.
Oh, she's in Illinois too.
Yeah, and it
her
was
boys weren't required to
elective.
take consumer econ. Probably there was some section of some other class that had whatever met the state requirement. But I actually think that you could, I could talk to you offline about that, Kim, because I actually worked on state curriculum committees and it's supposed to be in there. And if they didn't do it, then they might be in trouble. So.
Oh.
Going back to that
so-
Facebook user,
Yes.
real quick. there's a credit thing that say that you want to borrow $500, you actually have to give the bank $500, and so you're making payments on your money, and then you get your money back when you pay it off. I think that's what she's mentioning about that getting the money back at the end.
So another thing that we don't necessarily think about when we're thinking about retirement, but I know a friend of mine was a census taker years ago, and in Gloucester, when this woman had bought her house in Gloucester, it was a fishing town, and then as a retiree, it was a very expensive property with really, really, really high taxes, and that was gutting her budget. You know, and like she bought a modest fishing house, you know, like, and here she, you know, we don't necessarily think about how our property taxes are going to be changing over time too.
Right.
Yeah. I do have that in here to talk about later on, how the taxes are going to affect us in retirement, because you don't think about that. And I've heard different, and just listening to my own parents talking about, you know, because both of my parents are retired, and they're like, you know, a lot of my aunts and uncles have their properties are completely paid off, but they're like, you've got nothing left. And your mortgage might be paid off, but sometimes that isn't healthy, because at that age, your credit score. So if you needed to borrow money, you don't have anything to borrow off of anymore. So I was going to ask them a little bit more about that and see, because I don't know enough about that yet. But even though my parents are completely retired, I mean, they both still work. They started
most people in
another business
do.
because even though he retired from 40 years in the airline industry, and my mother was in the dental industry for 40 years. It was like, our lifestyle has changed, and our living is not what it was. And because our lifestyle has changed, now we have a higher lifestyle, and our expectations of how we're retiring is different. So we've got to accommodate for that, because what we had planned 30 years ago, and that didn't take into consideration our lifestyle changes and who we are at this moment in our lives. So that's interesting to see them going through this over the last, my dad's been retired.
A lot of people imagine that they'll be able to travel when they retire.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that they'll have free time to do all of these things that they've always wanted to do. And, you know, poverty amongst the elderly in our country is serious. It's a serious problem. And, you know, we don't live in a country like my husband and I just spent a week in Iceland for post-Christmas and through the New Year's. It was amazing week. That is a democratic country. They have democratic elections and presidents and, you know, legislature and all that, very similar to us. Very free country, very, very wonderful country. But they have really good sort of social safety net programs, universal healthcare, good healthcare for everybody built into the taxes. Yes, their taxes are high. Yes, they pay a larger percentage of their income towards taxes, but everybody has healthcare. Everybody has access to, you know, everybody's got a solid retirement. It's a very strong social safety net country. Other countries are much better at this thing than we are here in the United States. We're our sort of fierce, you know, do it on our own, you know, Americana mentality has not served us well when it comes to social safety nets that most people, well, no, all people need at some point.
Yep. And as someone who does not have kids, there's not like a, hey, maybe your kids will take care of you someday.
Right. Same.
You know,
Same.
I mean, we kid
And
around about, the sheds out back are for the in-laws and my parents, and we tell them that that's the retirement homes. You can come live here. But I mean, I think a lot of people rely on family, and many of us don't have kids,
Yep.
My
Yeah.
mom had really good retirement planning, had really good income, had a house that was worth a lot of money that she was able to live after my father died. She was able to live very comfortably in a lovely condo and do some traveling and be active and have a car and do all, and give to charity. And she was staying active and just she wasn't spending money like crazy. But she kept saying, she was smart enough. She started realizing in her late 80s, she started saying, I'm going to run out of money. I'm actually running out of money. And it's true. It actually worked out that and then we had to sell our house and in order to, get those last few dollars to pay for the last 2 years of her life where she was in a facility and declining with Alzheimer's. She burned through more money in that last 2 years than what she burned through the entire first 30 years of her retirement.
that is you just don't even realize until you have to go through that to know what going through that nursing home, assisted living.
Yeah.
It's people think, oh, it's great. You sell your home and even a paid off home and cover it. Nope. Doesn't
No, it was
matter.
gone. She got
Gone.
she got $250,000 gone in less than 2 years.
2 years. I can't even. Yeah.
Well,
and there are people who live in those type of homes for decades.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really scary. I was a home health aide and a nurse's aide for a long time, and there are people who've been in a nursing home for 20 years.
Right. Yep.
And if they're in a Medicare nursing home, that's not a way you want to live.
No.
The Medicare facilities are not good.
All right. Community groomers, we're not trying to scare you. We're not trying to bring down the dark days.
Just a little.
Well, sometimes a little bit of scary is good.
Exactly.
Don't let this happen to you.
Lights the fire.
Yeah. We're not trying to bring that this year is, we've had enough with the last 2 years. But what we are saying is
Plan ahead.
planning. Doesn't
Plan
matter
ahead.
how old you are. If you can, now is the time to start. We're starting this because it came out last week, and this was asked by one of our own Pet Pro educators said, I want to talk about this for a month, and this needs to be on the hot seat for this month. So this is
I
why
really commend you, Dara, for doing this topic because it's hugely needed in the grooming industry.
Yep.
Yeah.
So we're going to
Absolutely.
do a little bit more in depth. I know it's not a happy, bubbly topic, but for all those
But
that
it
hung
needs
on
to
with us,
be out there.
thank
Totally.
you.
Well, I think it is a happy, bubbly topic when you're like, okay, I feel relieved that I am now on the path.
Knowledge,
I'm doing things, and
knowledge is
relieved.
power.
Like I know what I'm going to work toward so that I can feel secure later on.
Yep.
And how about
back to the story of Cindy that I started with, this groomer who had groomed 29 years for cash under the table and didn't know that she didn't have Social Security or anything, and had no savings to speak of either. If she had just been educated about what was coming down the road, her whole life story could have been different.
Well, that's what I was saying.
Her biggest problem was that she didn't know that Social Security wasn't automatic. And she thought that would be enough in any case, so never assume.
And I want to say, doesn't matter whatever age you are, now's the time to start.
Yep.
At least get started now. And I think you kind of have an advantage being a little older because you can be more aggressive in your savings and what you're doing. So sit tight and hang with us next week, and let's bring on Ben and see what he can tell us about.
That's so cool. A financial
information.
advisor for free on this show next week.
Woo!
I'm
Tell all the
excited.
other groomers.
Yes. We will bring in Ben, and he, he's Edward Jones, but not here to talk about the who, but the what.
Yeah.
So that's what we need. We need a little bit more, and the differences and what's going on. So stay tuned with us. Thank you. We had a lot of new viewers tonight. That is so
good.
exciting for the first of the year. You guys know me. I love this business stuff, so it's right up my alley.
That is why you are an industry icon, Pet Age Magazine award-winning icon.
Yep.
Well, I'll blush a little bit. Look at Jennifer. You're the traveling queen of us.
I did have fun in Iceland, but I agree with you, Lisa Herbold. I'd rather pay higher taxes and have those social safety nets.
Yeah, but we can't depend on them.
No, but it's
that's
certainly
gonna be my parting words. You can't depend on somebody else. You got to do it yourself. That's what it comes down to nowadays. You got to do it yourself.
And we got to figure out how to just put the money aside as if we're paying a bill.
Yeah,
exactly.
Just like it's another utility bill, get it set up and then just start putting your money into
the overhead.
Can't be optional, like whatever money I have left over, that's what I'll put in.
Yeah. Gas, electric, retirement.
So that's what I'm saying. The four of us being the outer edges here, but we're in the same state, so it's a good balance to have. Yeah.
I don't know who I'm pointing at.
It's like the Brady Bunch.
Have a half hour just to discuss this and see, because we also come from different perspectives with house call, employee to owners. That's it.
Well, and being in the same state with similar kind of living costs.
Yeah, absolutely. That's we all do. So, we'll have some answers next week. All right. Any
so exciting to have a financial advisor coming our way next week. That'll be great.
I know.
I shall be listening with great interest.
Tell everyone.
Tell everyone.
Tell everyone.
Share it. Maybe I'll
bring in pen and paper.
Yeah, right?
Yes.
Start writing down some good questions.
Exactly.
Spend the week writing down some really good questions because you'll have somebody to ask.
Yep.
Ooh, we could do a test at the end. No.
Oh, no.
That freaks out way too many people. Holy cow.
Google Forms. We'll start it. I will write that test. Don't tempt me.
Guys. Have a great night. We will see you next week.
Yep.